All right, and Assalamu alaikum to everybody who has joined us here today. So I would like to welcome you all to ISNAD, and ISNAD stands for Islaah News, Announcement and Discussions. This is going to be a special segment where speakers will meet and discuss relevant, burning issues taking place around us. Now, ISNAD will endeavor to unite thinking minds and will allow the attendees and the invitees an opportunity to ask questions, have their doubts addressed, as well as allowing them to voice some of their reform statements they might have been suppressing. Islaah is an opportunity for, ISNAD is an opportunity for Islaah to touch upon the references made about it, or even any of its speakers, by external parties before setting out to fully dissect the matter at hand, which would be considered beneficial to be tackled. Here we have today several very renowned scholars and who will be our panelists, who will have this very, how can I put it? It's a campfire sort of conversation that they're going to have, a very free flow, heart to heart about questions that will be posed. Some questions already have been posed, and these are the ones that we're going to be putting forward today. This session is going to be an hour, so we will be limiting our questions and our answers to be very, very short, and I shall have control of the table. So whenever there's a problem or whenever you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will allow you that space. Now, without further ado, I just want to mention that the panelists here are from the US and from the UK, and of course we have Sayyid Alihur, who is joining us from India. So let me say welcome and karibu sana from my Kiswahili roots, and let's begin. So very, very quickly, I just want to tackle the first question, which is a very pertinent one actually. And so it's become very, very clear that there's researchers who have been showcased on the Al-Islah channel. And this actually shows, or they've discussed, that Shiaism isn't a unified monolithic block or theory. Rather, it is a vibrant intellectual school of thought with various sub-schools of thought, sometimes even mutually opposing ones. So let me explain this very, very quickly, or let me just do the words. So you have the Usuli and the Akhbari. Now we're going to clear this out later because I'm sure some of us don't understand this. But then we have the Irfani and the Shaykhi, and then you have the traditional and the reformists, or rather the revivalist schools. And all of these are, they're working in the same framework of Shiism. Now, currently, we see the trend that within our Khoja Shia communities, and especially at the leadership level, what has happened is the space and the freedom that was given to these schools are not being awarded to everybody else. At the same time, there's a systemic attempt to marginalize and sideline and suppress other schools within the schools of Ahlul Bayt, and to push them away to the side by labeling them deviant alternative thinkers without any regard of the evidence they are presenting. So this is for you here. Do you think this is healthy and a viable approach for dealing with revivalists or the voices that are seeking to explain a shiaism that is not tainted? Floor is open.
So maybe I could take the first shot at it. And we have to see how science has developed over the ages and over the centuries. And you see during the medieval period onwards, a period where religion, in a sense, in the Western world was declining and science was advancing. And it's said that the reason that happened was that science opened up the space for people to debate, to discuss, to have dialogue, and come up with what is it that makes the most sense and what is it that has the most potency, and they move forward with that. And that's how science moved forward. Whereas what was going on with the Catholic Church at the time was suppression of any kind of voice that didn't agree with the existing status quo. And that led to more and more deterioration in the religious circles. So we need to ask ourselves if we need to advance, or are we deteriorating?
So if we look at history, what you're trying to say is there's been suppression in religious circles.
Yes,
okay.
Definitely a lot.
So,
and across the board, different religions.
All right. So what would be a healthy and viable approach? So we're looking at solutions here.
Yeah, whenever there are different opinions that come up, they need to be discussed in a healthy manner, and without any kind of pressure to conform. And the biggest issue that happens is when we become sticklers for asserting what we have grown up with. We grew up with something and we don't want to let go. It's like a baby. A baby has got its rattle and it doesn't want to let its rattle go. It just wants to stick to that rattle. So we need to grow up. We have a very limited life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us only a certain few number of decades that we are here, and we cannot afford to waste that time or lose that time in just trying to stick to whatever we learned as children. We need to make sure that we have, passed the different stages and come as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as possible. And that requires sacrifice, and that requires change, positive change, and evolution. So if we are not going to evolve within our lifetime, then within a few decades, our lifetime will be over, and we would have failed the test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in. I mean, a lot of people are not born Muslim, right? And when we expect them somehow to find the right path when it's presented to them, then we need to ask ourselves, how open are we to change and to look in the mirror and reflect and see that maybe there's something about us that we need to change, we need to evolve. So that's the kind of possibility.
As a key researcher, I would like to say that there is change. I mean, there is change that is being done from where we are. However, the change you are saying might not be the one that I'm thinking. The change you are discussing is a full sort of revivalist sort of change. The change I'm discussing is the change in the rules and regulations that we've had since my childhood until today. There are multiple things that have changed, and maybe that's something that we're going to need to get back to. Let me give the floor to Khadija Zareen and let her give us her outlook on this, please.
Yeah, so I think my entire journey, when it came to really understanding where we lie in shiaism and what our understanding of shiaism is, I think when I really started to really look into the Quran, I feel like there's something about the way we read the Quran or understand the Quran I think that's where the problem really lies. If, there's something there that, that there's like some ghaib or something that comes between us and our understanding. So ever since I have opened my eyes, I feel like, the truth has been revealed to me through, different sources. I feel I have understood the Quran deeper. So, there's something there in our inability to understand the Quran. If we understood the Quran truly, then I don't think that we would be having these kind of, name callings or, such misunderstandings, I would say. So I would say that, yeah.
But let me come back to you in this particular sense, where you say your eyes have been opened and you've started reading the Quran and you started understanding it in a different
deeper manner,
a deeper meaning. From my remembrance, we've been told that, we don't have the knowledge to understand the Quran. We are not apt enough We need to go to the mentors.
I feel if you read the Quran, that then you would not say that. I mean, you need to read the Quran more.
Okay, all right. So
yeah.
Because during the olden times, we used to be told, you do not have that capacity. But
isn't that wrong? Isn't that the kind of thinking we need to fight against, right?
Yes, and I mean, and this is why we're saying, I mean, what these challenges that are cropping up, the revivalists are being stifled. They're being pushed just because now we are able to say, oh, our eyes have opened. So I mean, there is change, of course, but are we reforming? Are we reviving? And this is where we want to look into. Let me give the floor to Misam and see what he has to say. Misam.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I just have a small point to make. I mean, I don't think I can provide a solution or give a definitive answer to, the question that you have asked. People are going to do what they're doing. You can't, convince them. But I just want to, remind people of a few things which might help them reflect. They're opposing Islaah. They're opposing any kind of reform or, any curiosity or research into religion. But they don't realize that where we are today itself is a very evolved and very reformed version of Shiaism or even Islam. In the past, we have had beliefs, we have had fiqh positions which were very different. Many scholars in the past, for example, it's just a small point. Many scholars in the past even considered the Ahlul Kitab to be najis. But today you have scholars who are saying even the Mushrikun, non-Ahlul Kitab, non-Muslims, even they are not najis. So, it's constantly evolving. The same about beliefs, as Sayyid Alihur has, mentioned multiple times, that the beliefs that scholars thought was kufr and shirk in the past are mainstream beliefs today. The same with akhbarism. Akhbarism used to be the norm. It was the main school of thought in Shiaism at one point of time. But then there was a revolution, an intellectual revolution, and today we are usulis. And people think that the positions that exist today are the mainstream position, and they think this is what represents the opinions of the Ahlul Bayt. So if you say anything against it or try to question it, they think that you're questioning Ahlul Bayt themselves. But they don't realize that what we have today, the version of Shiaism or the version of Islam that we have today itself is very evolved, and it has gone through many stages of evolution and reform. So I think this is a very important point to ponder upon. And if they read the history of our sect, or even the history of Islam generally, how things have evolved, this will really open their minds, and this will make them ready for critical thinking and questioning many things.
Thank you for that. It's just that I realized one thing is that the human race has gone down to 140 characters. We do not want to read more than that. And I mean, having this particular session where they can watch and they can understand what we're trying to say, I think is better. So it's more than 140 characters. Hiba Zehra, let me not take your time, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to what everyone else had said before. And I think it's really important to understand that we shouldn't, as human beings, we should always seek to challenge what we've been brought up with. We shouldn't seek to confirm a bias that we've been raised with, because from the cradle to the grave, the purpose of our life is to get closer to God and to be born in the same belief and to die in the exact same belief. Where's the change and growth in life? So I think also the idea that not being able to understand the Quran, that there's loads of ilm al-ghaib hidden within it, feeds into ideas that precisely you don't really need to prove anything from the Quran, because if it's beyond our understanding in the first place, how can we ever find it within there? So it opens a floodgate of arguments that don't really need to be verified empirically by the source itself, and everyone can just bring their own opinion and their own version and then cover it with the idea that we don't have the knowledge for it. So I think that's really important to understand, and I think that's just like a thing that's just one of the aims of Islaah.
Thank you for that. And on the part of covering the information and whatever, I'm going to become the devil's advocate here. I'm going to ask the next question. And all right, so given that there is scope in diversity and divergence in the of opinion within Shiaism, right? And every school and sub-school within the Shia school has been given ample freedom and opportunity to express itself and promote what it believes to be authentic teaching of the Ahlul Bayt. We cannot deny that traditional school is the dominant mainstream school today, like you say. And yeah, I mean, we have changed from the Akhbari to the Usuli, but there is still some sort of gray area that we can look into. The only thing is that the reformist researchers are coming through and they have their own research. And what's happening is rather, like the traditionalists are coming in and they're not playing neat and fair. Let's put it this way. The plan that they are using to safeguard both the public interest and as well as the right of the reformist scholars to express themselves and articulate their research and evidences. What's happening is the traditionalists are planning to invest up to £250,000 and set up a world-class state-of-art research institute where reformist scholars, such as some of yourselves, would be allowed or will be invited, not will be allowed, but will be invited to discuss their researches, but behind closed doors, in the presence of traditional scholars. Who have aged like trees, so they can't be swayed with your presentations, regardless of how strong the evidences you bring in. However, my question is, do you agree that this is a fair and neat solution? And so that, like the public is not swayed, or it's the information does not reach them from the reformist scholars who've been given the full, what's going to happen is, we've given you full freedom to present your researches, but of course in the safe environment, the closed doors. Do you think it would be fair to go with your research and present to these guys?
Definitely.
Yeah. Floor is open.
Right. So if you permit me, I could address that one since it's for the scholars.
Please.
Yeah. So what I would say is that, look, essentially their argument is that we are the mainstream. So if you want to present anything that doesn't sound like it's mainstream, or that doesn't resemble what the mainstream or what's popular today, then you should just, we're going to build this center or this research institute where behind closed doors, you can just come and, to use their words, vomit your research. What I've been saying in this regard is that, yeah, this concept is not new. They had in ancient Rome, they used to have vomitariums, which were state-of-the-art facilities where people could go and vomit stuff after they had eaten too much. But what we are presenting and what the revivalist scholars are presenting within the school of Ahlul Bayt is not exactly vomit. In fact, it is not even in the neighborhood of that. Anyone who tries to revive the actual school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wasalam, to present the bayinat from the kitab and the authentic teachings of the imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wasalam, why do you want to suppress that and curtail that and contain that? You're trying to contain and control it as if it's some kind of infection or some kind of pandemic or something of that sort, whereas the reality is that the bayinat of the kitab and the authentic teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wasalam are the international treasure of not just the school of Ahlul Bayt, but the entire ummah. Far from suppressing it and hiding it from the Shia, we should be sharing this with the entire Muslim ummah. And alhamdulillah, Islaah, because they have opened the door for this, we have received so many messages from the rest of the ummah, from other schools saying, subhanallah, we had so many misconceptions about the Ahlul Bayt and their school and their original teachings, which got dispelled because of the researches that Al-Islah showcased and allowed to come out. So I feel that this is really counterproductive and unhealthy, that you want to stifle and suppress crucial researches which are of benefit for the average person within the ummah. The teachings of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt are not just for scholars to be discussed behind doors. Rather, the actual message of Ahlul Bayt, which we are trying to revive, it applies to each and every single person in the ummah, and everyone stands to benefit from it. So why should we treat it like it's something that should only be discussed among scholars and the public should not catch wind of it? It should not be shared with the public. This is the mirath of the ummah. It's the heritage of not just the ummah, but the entire humanity. وَأُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ لِأُنذِرَكُمْ بِهِ وَمَنْ بَلَغْ. This Quran has been revealed to me, the Prophet is instructed to say, so that I may share it with you and with everyone else to whom it reaches. So this message, I believe, should go far and wide, and everyone deserves to hear it, not just scholars or people behind closed doors.
Let me listen to what Raza Rizvi has to say, and then we'll come back to you.
Assalamu alaikum, bro. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Salam to the whole panel. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, mashallah, a lot of the co-panelists have mentioned a lot of valuable points. I just want to add a little bit to Sayyid Kamanpuri's Hafidhullah's point. The points that he mentioned about the treasure that we have for everyone. I fully agree with his statement that what we have and what we're presenting essentially is the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt that are completely in line with the Quran. And it's something that, especially from not being from a Shia background, it's something that's unknown. People don't know these teachings. They don't know that, oh, wow, so you've actually got these opinions in your school as well. Because they're so used to only having one opinion that when something else is presented, they think, wow, like we only thought that this is what defines Shiaism. So a good example, just as a personal example, you know, the other day I went to Jummah, and when I went Jummah, the masjid I prayed in was the masjid of Al-Sunnah. So it was a Sunni masjid, and I prayed Jummah there. And there was a couple of Shias there. And they stopped me outside the mosque, and they said to me, oh, Raza, you know, we've seen your stuff online, and we really appreciate, you know, some of my newer content where I'm more on the reform and Al-Islaah kind of vibe and mentality. They were like, Raza, we really appreciate that you've said these things, because this is the stuff that we've been feeling for so long, but no one says it. So as far as many Shias might disagree with some of the things that we have in terms of our research, there's a huge amount of Shias that I speak to and that I see personally, like the example I gave you in the masjid, that say, wow, we really wanted to say these things, but we can't because we're afraid of a backlash, or our community or the scholars will go against us and call us, you know, label us and give us fatwas. So essentially what we're doing is in the time of every prophet, ﷺ, the prophets used to come and say their truth. And in the community, you know, if I say something and everyone agrees with me and the whole world agrees and everyone hugs me, chances are it's not really close to the truth, because the truth is not for everyone. And that's why if you look at the seerah of the Anbiya alayhi salam in the Quran, their communities would always go against them whenever they would preach, because they would go against the local customs, the local rituals, and the local beliefs that go against Tawheed and what Allah wants. And essentially, Al-Islaah, that's what it's about. So as far as so much people that are negative towards, you know, what we're saying, there's a lot of positive people as well. But again, even the people that are positive, they say it behind the scenes because they're so scared of a backlash. And that tells you a mentality. Why are people so scared? You know, for a school that says that we have the truth, why are we so scared to counter different views? Don't we say to our Sunni brothers all the time, you should question your scholars, you should question the Sahaba? Don't we tell them that all the time? But now when it comes to your own school, you do a U-turn. So that was my 2 pence on the thing, and inshallah we'll continue.
There's a very simple word for that. It's called hypocrisy. But I will leave it with that.
That's your words, not mine.
Let me give the floor to Misam. Misam, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Raza said. It makes a lot of sense. And along the same lines, I mean, this all the discussion that is taking place, and I mean, we don't run behind controversy, but all these controversies and setting up a research center and articles and speeches coming out, I think this is still, we should look at it in a positive way. It's a blessing in disguise, because I've met different kinds of people. There are some people, when you tell them that you should not call upon anyone other than Allah, the Ahlul Bayt are normal human beings with taqwa, they are ulama abrar, and they don't have ilmul ghaib, and they say, yeah, of course, I mean, this has always made sense to us. We read the Quran and this is what we saw in the Quran. I don't know what the scholars are saying. This is what we've always believed. So there are some people who are very independent and critical, and they have already found the truth from the Quran and by using their logic. But there are some other people, when you tell them these things, they're like, yeah, man, we have always questioned these things. But then, we thought, who are we? We're just lay people. We did not have the courage to come out and, actually accept these facts. And now that you have shown us that the Quran says these things and the Ahlul Bayt themselves have said these things, now we are confident enough to accept these beliefs and practices and leave the shirk and khurafat that we have been involved in. So now that all these opinions and researches are coming out, a lot of people who were on the edge, who did not have the confidence to themselves independently accept these things, it will really help them when these researches come out. A lot of people are unaware that such opinions have existed within our school of thought. They are unaware that Ahlul Bayt have said such things, because they have always been presented with a one-sided picture. So I think this is still a blessing in disguise.
Thank you, Misam. And I mean, just reflecting upon what Khadija Zareen said earlier, that we need to go back, we need to read the Quran and, not fear being told that we don't have the capacity of understanding it. And yeah, I mean, you can do your research. These days, that is open. So, I mean, that's the beautiful thing, that when you go back and people start realizing and reading more of the Quran and going back to what the Ahlul Bayt has said and putting it together and making sure that, they fit like a glove, then we are headed somewhere. So thank you very much for that, Misam. Kamran, you've raised your hand. How would you like to add into this?
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I agree with everything said so far, but I just wanted to add one thing of this backlash that we're talking about, that, different ideas get. I think it's also important to understand that this comes like naturally to humans, is where, it's this very tribal like kind of mindset where we like to play sides, and we have like this loyalty to our own side because we attach identity to our group. And, there's a lot of comfort that comes with being with like your group, right? And like having people who think the same way as you, and like having that sort of comfort zone. And this comes very naturally to humans in all aspects of life. So when you play these sides games, you have like this misplaced loyalty towards your side, and this is what causes you to like shut off your brain, and like have this kind of like tribal mindset. And this is kind of like the shell that I think we should everyone should really try to break out of, where when it comes to religion, like the loyalty that you have should only to be to God, right? So your goal shouldn't be to please your side or your group, and it should be, and protecting your group. With this backlash, people they feel attacked, so they're going to defend their side, which comes naturally. But I think that for us to grow, we need to like break out of that mindset when it comes to religion, and really just go with the evidence, the Quran, the clear verses of the Quran, and really only have loyalty towards God, and how can we reach the truth that is closest to what He wants, not what our group that we were raised with wants. So I just wanted to add to that.
Thank you so much. Yes, we. I mean, the information that I've received from the forefathers, so from my father, from my grandfather, that has sort of put me in a cocoon. And unless the cocoon breaks, then the butterfly emerges. That's what I feel. But that's my opinion. Said Hur, you had raised your hand before Said Raza. So can I give it to Said Raza, or would you
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind giving it to Ustad. He's our distinguished.
Please, Said Raza, you've got the floor.
No, I can't do that. Go on, say it. You first. I'll go after you, Said. Go on, you first.
Okay. Can I make the decision? We'll go alphabetically from the bottom. So Said Rizvi, you have the floor.
Okay, no problem. Say will go after me. Yeah, so just on a couple of points that Brother Kamran made, beautiful points, logical points that he made. I wanted to add to a couple of points on this, just on the general mindset. If you generally look at the Shia world at the moment, also, I want people to understand that look at the priorities of us as a sect and our awam and nas and our scholars. A community, a sect is known by its community. A community's head is generally run by the scholars. I'm talking from a religious perspective. Look at what your priorities are. In the Shia community today, you've got khurafat, you've got bid'ah, you've got shirk, you've got extremism. All sort of practices that are filled with bid'ah, khurafat, beliefs that are clearly ghulu, and things that are completely contradicting to the Quran. When you have such a pile of things within modern day Twelverism that we have today, when a community comes, when a group of people assemble within the community to try and say, hold on, let's do Islaah on these issues, we've gone wrong here. The priority of the community and the people and the scholars isn't to say, oh, well, you know what? Well, you lot have got a point. You're right. This is the problem and we should be fixing this. Rather, what they see as the problem is those that are trying to do al-Islah. So their problem is with the people trying to fix the problem. Rather, the reason why people like us are born is because of these issues. If these issues weren't there, then we would have been like, alhamdulillah, the scholars are doing their job. Everything's getting sorted. Now that we're having to come and deal with these topics, the community, rather than saying, oh, well, you know what, you're right, we've got these problems, they treat us like public enemy number one. So it shows you a mindset that the brainwashing is so hard and severe that people don't understand what's haqq and batil anymore. So when someone tries to say this is ghalat, it's against the clear verses of the Quran, it's against the clear established sunnah, here's the references, they say, no, you are the problem and you are, a threat to Shiaism, even though we're actually trying to sort the problem out. So people have lost the tamiz, the furqan, the differentiation between haqq and batil, and it just shows you the priorities of the sect. And I'll give you a good example of this, and I'll leave it with this and pass it on to Sayyid Ustad, is that someone like Sayyid Fadullah, in his time, he talked about the incident of Sayyidah Zahra's martyrdom, and he indicated that he felt like it was a doubtful incident in one of his taqrir. And there was a big backlash, and a lot of scholars went against him. In his same time, or at least a similar time period, there were scholars saying that there's tarif on the Quran. But what was the priority? The priority was Sayyid Fadullah is Dal Mudil. He's the problem. He's saying don't do this. He's saying this is ghalat. And the other people who are getting away with saying the Quran has tarif in it, that's fine. That's just a mistake, or that's just something we can. So the priorities are wrong. And until we realize, and like Brother Kamran said, and the sister said, until we go back to the Quran and let the Quran tell us what the priority is, which is Tawheed and following the way of the Anbiya, we're never going to go forward because our priorities are not coming from the Quran, rather coming from man-made scholars. I'll pass it on.
Thank you for that. Sayyid, you have the floor.
Yeah, that's a beautiful observation shared by Ustad Sayyid Raza. And in fact, the verse of Surah Al-Mulk was playing in my mind when he's talking about this phenomenon, this tendency that people have to want to clean up the cleaners and neutralize the very people who are trying to clean up the scene after the debris that the Ghulat and the Mufawwida and all these deviant sects have left the school in. The people trying to do the cleanup are the ones you want to clean up instead of the khurafat, which ought to be cleaned up. So that's exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in Surah Al-Mulk, chapter 67, verse 9, where he talks about how every time a community received warners, they actually turned the tables on the warners and said, in antum illa fi dalalin kabir. It's not us that are the problem. You are the ones in manifest error. Imagine the warners who came to warn them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remind them of the scripture, to remind them of the reminders of God. They turned the gun on them and they said, you are the ones who are misguided and deviant. Rather, what we inherited from our forefathers is the way to go. So in any case, the point I wanted to make for my part is addressing our communities. I would say to them, there are revivalist movements within others, within almost every sect, within other faith groups, for example. I mean, take the mainstream majority within Islam, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. There are revivalist movements within them, within the Salafiyah. You see, there are cover-ups in every sect. How would you like for cover-ups on the other side to be dealt with? And then see if that approach is the same that you're opposing on your side. So to give you a concrete example, in certain sections within the Ahlus Sunnah, among the Salafiyah, among the Wahhabiyah, for example, it is considered taboo to talk about the fada'il, the genuine, authentic fada'il of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt and the Ahlul Bayt of the Holy Prophet, which have been narrated in Sunni books. I'm not talking about narrating fada'il from Basair al-Darajat or Al-Kafi or Al-Istibsar or Bihar al-Anwar. No, we're talking about fadail of Ahlul Bayt from Bukhari, from Muslim, from An-Nasa'i. You are not allowed to mention them in certain circles. If you make too much mention, they say, oh, this person has got Rafidi tendencies, or he's become Shia or something like that. So there are revivalists within the Sunni world who are actively trying to say that, no, love of Ahlul Bayt, fadail of Ahlul Bayt, this is an authentic Sunni thing as well. We are people, the establishment sometimes tries to silence such revivalists and such reformists and to say that they are deviant or that they belong to the other sect, they are Rafidites or they are this or they are that. So I would ask our community members, what would you say to such attempts, repressive attempts that try to block these voices of revival? And coming to the plan, see, Sayyid Misam was saying it's actually a good thing that they want to set up a research institute. I say, I absolutely agree. I'm not against the establishment of research institutes. I believe there should be a research institute for Al-Islah, for reformist scholars, for revivalist scholars. We are not against research institutes. We are against this idea that you are saying we need to set up an institute. Why? Because we want to suppress and contain voices of revival. We want to create a conference hall or a conference room where these discussions can take place behind the scenes. So imagine if the Ahlul Sunnah were to say that, okay, if someone wants to share fadail of Ahlul Bayt from Sunni books, he is free to do so, but only at a designated conference room inside the halls of Al-Azhar, where only scholars will be present. The public must not learn about the true fadail of Ahlul Bayt. The public must not be told that Bukhari and Muslim have narrated this fadila for Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, or this fadila for Amirul Mu'mineen, or that Hadithul Ghadir is actually mutawatir in our sources as well. The public doesn't need to find out this. Why? They'll get confused. This is what we are being told. Don't share the true teachings of Ahlul Bayt. Why? It's causing confusion. It's causing division, disunity. So Baba, if you have become such that the haqq is dividing you, and the emergence of the haqq is dividing you, then you need to introspect and soul search and ask yourself, where have we come? That the haqq is now dividing us. The haqq should unite us. But the fact that it's dividing you means that you are not prepared to accept it and that you're not ready and receptive as far as it's concerned. So yeah, I would say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you existed in, let's say, Safa with Iran, where the Akhbaris were the majority, people who are against Taqleed, people who believe in Tahrif, and you are the Usuli minority who follow Marajia, how would you want them to treat you? Would you want them to dismiss you as deviant alternative thinkers and kick you out of Iran and their community? Or would you want them to say that, okay, these people may have certain differences of us, they may have a different understanding of Ahlul Bayt from us, but at the end of the day, we are the same school. So let's have dialogue and let the public hear both sides and make up its mind.
What you're saying is really amazing, because it just shows that there's some sort of tribal mindset that we are stuck with. And not only that, but the thing I'm wondering is that why aren't we allowed to ask why? Because if you asked just why are you doing something that my forefather used to do, that now I have information that I can change and maybe become a better Muslim or have a better understanding of this particular thing? I think I have an answer for this. I think my heart has been clogged. My heart has gotten this dark circle around it that does not allow change, that does not allow reform to come through. There's a cloud shrouding over, like in Dua Kumail, it says, if you have an umbrella that's open, the barakah is not going to fall onto you. So if your heart has been and covered with stuff that's not clean and not true, that's maybe the reason why we are not asking why. But I mean, this is just me introspecting. Let Said Raza, I think you raised your hand first, so I'll let you have the floor, and then Nisam can come through.
Yeah, Baba, wanted to add to Sayyid Ali Hor's point was that I find this a very funny phenomenon where people will say that, yeah, we can talk about these issues in private closed doors. But let's discuss all of these problems that we have and all of the khurafat and bid'ah and shirk and going against clear verses of the Quran. Discuss this in a private room. Just don't discuss it publicly. So discuss it with the scholars privately, but don't tell the awam. Baba, the whole point is that the awam get guided. As in the specialists in a room talking about things that they already know. It shows you there's a bigger problem going on, that the specialists know there's a problem, and their solution is come to my house, let's talk about it privately, let's have some chai, samosa, and go home, and then that's it. And then go next week to the masjid and listen to the majlis and carry on listening to the same khurafa. That's not how you sort the issue out. The way the most people, when they say let's talk about it privately, I've had many people who have said to me that, Raza, when you change your positions and you done ruju and you change your positions, I agree with a lot of the stuff that you said. Do you know the only thing I disagree with? I say, what's that? And I know what's coming. We just don't like the way that you said it publicly because it benefited or it promoted or benefited X, Y, Z. And by X, Y, Z, it's only Sunnis, right? Who else is there? Who else? It harmed the image of Shiism. And I said, well, like Sayyid Ustad said, Sayyid Kanpuri said, if the truth benefits the Sunni in this issue, then they got this right. if a Sunni scholar comes out tomorrow and speaks against Muawiyah, and the Sunni says, Ya Shaykhna, what you're saying is right, but by saying it publicly, you've benefited the Shia. So should the haqq be suppressed because it benefits the sect? If tomorrow I praise Nabi Isa and someone comes up to me and says, Raza, what you said is good, but you know what, bro? The Christians benefit from that. What am I going to take out the Quran, the ayat of the Quran out of this? The way Allah has mentioned the praise and the fada'il of Nabi Isa so openly in the Quran, the Christians can use that left, right, center. But the truth is the truth. He done those miracles. Where we disagree with them, we disagree with them. But what's the truth is the truth. So it's not about what sect benefits. What's important is the truth. And I've realized that when people realize that, the next stage they say is, we agree with what you're saying. We just don't agree that you said it publicly. So where should I say it? Privately in a room in an echo chamber? So that's my 2 pence. Inshallah, carry on.
Yeah, and what you said before, that fine line between haqq and batil is getting swayed. Like we don't realize that if it is haqq, then it is haqq, and it is the truth, regardless of what you want to do with it. So yeah, Nisam.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a small point. All this talk about setting up a research center and investing millions in it, this also shows a fundamental problem within our sect and the establishment. I mean, this shows you where their priorities are. Is this the biggest problem that they're facing? That your religion should be God-centric, you should call upon Allah alone, you should not, narrate khurafat and fabricated narrations from the member. This is the biggest problem for them. But They don't have any research centers for researching on how to, give dawah to the Christians, to give dawah to the atheists. There is a problem of Malangism within Shias. There's a problem of Akhbarism popping up in Hyderabad and in Pakistan. There's so many rituals. People are, hitting their heads, bloodletting. They're coming up with new rituals every year. This is not a problem. They don't need a research center for this, but they need a research center for, because we said Ahlul Bayt do not have ilm al-ghaib, the total knowledge of unseen, or, you should not call upon the Ahlul Bayt, you should call upon Allah. This is a big problem. So is their focus Allah in the deen, or is their focus these small claims about the Ahlul Bayt? And these are valid opinions which have existed within our school of thought. But still, this is the biggest problem. They need to set up a research center. Wow. How can someone say this? So I just wanted to highlight this. Look at the priorities. There are so many things in this world they can research and, invest into, but they want to set up a research center because of these claims. MashaAllah.
Yeah, like you said, priorities. Saidhur, let me give you the floor, and then we'll go to the final question.
Yeah, I just want to build further on what Al-Ustadh Sayyid Raza said with regard to this fear that people have of the truth, and how sometimes truth that emerges from their school may be of benefit to some other school. So, Baba, why are you so stingy with the truth like that? If I have a truth that will benefit or strengthen the position of some other school, more power to them. If they were already accepting the truth that's there in my school, why do you have a problem with that? I think, we've been quoting the Quran, we've been quoting the Ahlul Bayt, we've quoted the classical Shia scholars, the contemporary. I guess the only thing left to quote is the Bible. So I'll quote the Bible now. Jesus Christ in the Bible says, don't be scared of the truth. The truth will set you free. There is this liberating thing about the truth. The truth liberates, it sets free, it gives you more power. Why are you scared of the truth coming out? Why do you want to say only scholars deserve to hear the truth? Or even if you don't accept it's the truth, let's suspend the value judgment for now. Before something is accepted as truth, it's just a hypothesis, it's just a research. Fine. Allow for the public to be exposed to this hypothesis and this research, and let them figure out whether this makes more sense in light of what Allah has revealed in the Quran and common sense, or whether the khurafat, which are fabrications of ghulat, which are contradicted by the Quran, which are contradicted by the aqwal of Ahlul Bayt, which are contradicted by the demands of common sense, are those, the actual teaching of Ahlul Bayt. Let the public decide. Why do you want to suppress the truth? I will just end by giving the example of the Grand Mufti of Syria. I keep coming back to this example. Look at the other side. You're not looking at the other side, and that's why you can't understand your own self. Okay, the Grand Mufti of Syria, he has this lecture, it's available on YouTube. He says, 10 sanawatin wa ana ala maq'adi dirasa. Tens of years I spent, over a decade I spent in the traditional Sunni seminary. Not once was I told that Yawm Ashura is associated with the death, with the martyrdom of the grandson of the Holy Prophet, the Sayyidu Shababi Ahlil Jannah. He says, when through my own research I found it out, and I confronted my teachers and I said, what's wrong with you people? You taught me all kinds of nitty-gritties of history and this and that. You never once mentioned to me that this is the greatest tragedy of the Muslim Ummah after the Holy Prophet, that such a great event happened. Why did you hide this from me? And they said, for a simple reason, خَوْفًا مِنْ أَن تَتَأَثَّرَ فَتَتَشَيَّعَ. He said, when you start reading that part of history, when you start reading about Karbala, then you start asking questions. Why did it happen? What was the politics? What? He said, we did not want you to get influenced by that history and then incline towards the tashayyu' and incline towards, researching more about the Ahlul Bayt and why they were marginalized and suppressed and brutalized. So he says, he repeats the exact same words that Sayyid Raza was saying in English. He said, exactly, seriously, is that the reason? هل تخفى الحقائق لئلا أتأثر بمذهب? You are going to hide facts so that I should incline towards a certain madhab? What is this? Let the truth come out. Let people share it. Even if you don't accept it's the truth, it's research, it's hypothesis. Let the public be exposed to it and let them make up their minds. And if you really fear that it's so deviant, you are there, mashallah, you can refute it. Who's stopping you from refuting it and exposing the public to what you believe is the real research? But I don't understand this concept of, behind closed doors. And it's like, if there was a pandemic, or there's a pandemic in my city, or I discover a new virus, I'm supposed to go and, I can't warn my neighbors, I can't warn people who will be affected by it. I have to go to some remote corner in the world and discuss it only with the top level scientists. Meanwhile, I can see with my own eyes, people in my city are dying, they're being affected by it. This just doesn't make any sense.
That's beautifully put, and this is for just general knowledge. I watched this movie on Netflix. It's called Don't Look Up. It's very, very interesting, and that's exactly what happens. They will push you around, and they'll, that's how it works. But let me not do any spoilers. So do watch that. Let me give the floor to Sayyid Ali Haider before I ask my final question. So Sayyid Ali Haider, you have the floor.
Yeah, I wanted to add on that all the talk that is happening about, the school of Ahlul Bayt and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Aqidah and trying to contain deviant or alternative thinking behind closed doors. Now, all of this wanted to bring to the fore that actually all of this has nothing to do with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. It has nothing to do with the school of Ahlul Bayt. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with deen. What is it all about? Well, first of all, we know, like has been mentioned many times, the idea of the research center and behind closed doors is a containment strategy, because other strategies didn't work before, or rather they work and now they're not able to work anymore. For example, if you have a number of members that you control, then you can suppress what you don't want to come on that member. But if there's a member that you don't control, then that's out of your hands. So now there's a containment strategy for that's being proposed. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that this whatever is happening for one simple reason, and that is status quo. That we have come up today, we have been born into a situation, into a community that is structured in a particular way, and we like the Khushalis, we like the commemorations, we like the cultural activities that go around it, we like the social activities that go around it. We have developed a sociology, a culture, a community life that is beloved to us, that we are enjoying, and we do not want that to be disturbed. So this has nothing to do with the Ahlul Bayt. This has to do with, do not disturb our way of life as it exists. What Al-Islah is doing is saying that let us actually revert back to deen. Let us go back to Allah, to the authentic teachings of the Ahlul Bayt that agree with the Quran and establish. That's what Al-Islah is doing. So Al-Islah is actually bringing the Ahlul Bayt. What the people who are proposing a containment strategy are doing, they are saying that we have a way of life that we enjoy, and we do not want you to bring anything that you're bringing into the picture, because it's going to disturb our way of life. So this has got to do more with sociology and a cultural framework than it has to do with deen. It's Al-Islah that's actually pushing for the deen part of it.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I guess it's that comfort zone thing. Unless that cocoon breaks, only then will the butterfly come out. My final question, I mean, and this is something that I've seen, and this is something that has, it's been ingrained in my head for a very long time. And well, this is the last one for today, and surely, I'm sure we're going to go into in-depth discussions on what has been discussed today, what has been touched upon, but only for today. Given that so many of the mainstream scholars from far and wide, from Europe all the way to Canada, and in Africa as well, are claiming that someone who speaks good Arabic and can talk well using words that would flabbergast the audience is nothing but someone who will fizzle out, and that these non-conformist ideas like don't need to be answered, or are claims that don't make any sense. So what they do is, instead of answering to what has been brought up in a reformist sort of way, has led to character assassination of the person who is bringing this reform, regardless of who it is, on whatever level. I mean, what are they trying to achieve with these retorts? What would come out of this? I mean, what have we learned from the Prophet and his ways about answering to such things, and not going towards character assassination? So your views, please. Yes, please, Syed.
Yeah, I would say it's not surprising to see that they feel threatened by such researches and such revelations. The Holy Prophet, this was tried against him, as you can see, character assassination from day one. Surprisingly, interestingly, this is always what happens, is for the first 40 years, mashallah, you have a person who is as-sadiq al-amin. They swear by his trustworthiness and his honesty. All of a sudden, the wahi of Allah starts coming to him. He starts promoting it. He starts preaching tawheed. Oh my God, all of a sudden, as-sadiq al-amin becomes sahirun majnoon, sahirun kadhab. He's all of a sudden a liar now. And such a big liar, wal-iyadhu billah, that he's lying against Allah. The one who never lied against humans is now lying against Allah. What happened? Well, haqq happened. Tawheed happened. That's what tawheed, that's what it does to you. So same thing, Sayyid Raza Rizvi. We have a beautiful example of someone in front of us here. What were people saying about before? And what do some people say now? So this is going to happen if you walk on the path of prophets. This is definitely to be expected. Character assassination is something that we even predicted for Islaah. And in my discussions that I had with them, I warned them. I said, this is going to come your way. And they were like, well, the haqq has to go out. If we chicken out, if we allow this research to remain buried, and the real teachings of Ahlul Bayt to remain suppressed, then who's going to speak out? Who's going to, set the record straight? So yes, it was done with the Holy Prophet. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam was cursed on the mimbar of the Banu Umayyah for 90 years. They cursed him, and they made it a part of the Friday sermon. Everyone who stands up for the truth has to sign up for this, has to prepare for this, and should not be deterred by it when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, that clearly summarizes what has been eating inside my head. But Syed Haidar, please. You're muted, so unmute.
Yeah. So I would just like to add on to that, to what Sayyid Ali Hor said, that it reminds me of the mithal of Nabi Saleh alayhi salam. And when he grew up as a young man amongst his people, they really admired him. They're like, wow, this is a young, intelligent person who is shining in his wisdom, shining in his intelligence. We have great, great expectations for this person. This is amazing. This is the star of our community. This is the person that we're looking up to lead us to new heights. And then when Nabi Saleh came of age, and the time came and he declared the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then suddenly the faces just shot down for everyone, and they were faces of disappointment. You disappointed us. We are so disappointed in you, Saleh. What did you do? And actually mentioned this some time back to Sayyid Ali Hor, that your mithal is the mithal of Nabi Saleh, because every time he was preaching for more than 20 years and he was going places, he was going jamaats, almost every single jamaat that he went to offered him to become the resident alim. Even when they had resident alims, they're like, because you are the promise of our community. You are the shining star. You are what we are looking to. We are just waiting to see how you will soar. And then when he came out and he brought the truth with him, then they're disappointed because they're like, that's not what we were expecting. That's exactly the Quranic mithal of Nabi Salih.
At least they haven't banished him into the desert, yeah, walking for 40 years.
If they could, they would. If they could, they would. If they could, they would. Trust me.
Hiba, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some really interesting points made. And I think what we all need to understand as human beings walking this very temporary earth is that this isn't a game of ping pong whereby everyone gatekeeps their version of the truth, and what they deem to be the version of their truth, which they sleep comfortably at night with, is what they don't ever want to be challenged. I think the intention that everybody should have is to always search for the truth and not, be swayed by people saying people like Sayyid Ali Hur are creating doubts in our youth. We need to dispel these doubts. He keeps on telling everyone that what they believe in is wrong. This is Wahhabism and Salafism. It's such a prominent thing to blame every single thing on Wahhabism. It's so handy to have that little tactic just there, when the truth is that the same rebuttals we keep on hearing, we've all heard since we were children. Let's understand that there's something more, there's something deeper that we need to gain through all of this. Like when we actually turn to read the Quran, we see how sects are forbidden. Allah even tells the Prophet to leave the affairs of those who creates sects to him. Everybody wants to gatekeep what they think is the truth. But then when the truth actually comes in your face and it blares you, it blares a siren in your face, it keeps on pricking you, and the yearning for the search of the truth will continue to play in your mind. So I think the focus should be that, what is our salvation dependent upon? Is it dependent upon something that, there's been a lot of exaggerations over the years. There's been a lot of political and theological twists and turns in the last 1400 years. But the only thing that has actually remained is the Quran. I think that thing we should all understand. And if I were to give 3 key tips to anybody who was on the fence, it would be: number 1, make the intention to search for the truth. Number 2, turn to the primary source. Sister Khadija put it beautifully: read the Quran, keep on reflecting on the Quran. And, lastly, just open your mind and don't fall for these people who have like families in the scholarship, and they have big names thrown around in your local mosque saying these are just youths coming up from nowhere, just children. This is a sign of the day of judgment. Children will come sit on the mimbars and ruin our youths. Don't fall into that, because that's what Shaitan wants. He wants you to be kept far away from Tawheed. So I just think it's just really important for each and every one of us watching and listening to this today to keep on reflecting.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I just realized something. I still have family who is Ismaili, and there was a huge rift between the Ismailis and now, of course, my great-great-grandfather, who decided, I'm not going to follow this and I'm going to move. So was he a rebel? Was he a reformist? I'm trying to think about that. So there is, that change has to happen eventually, I suppose. And yeah, your 3 points are, straight on point. Is meet the intention, go back to the primary source, and open your mind. Those are beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Misam, you have the floor.
Yeah, those were some really beneficial points from Sister Hiba. And even what you said about your grandfather, mashallah. I mean, this is the state of affairs. We want everyone, every sect, every religion to think critically and question their own religion and their own scholars, but we don't want to do the same thing. Now, I just wanted to highlight that, every sect has this standard line of argumentation. When anyone stands up and questions something or thinks critically, if it's a normal person, they go like, come on, have you even studied Arabic? You don't even know the basics of Arabic. How can you talk about all these things? Our scholars have studied for 80 years, I mean, how can they be wrong? Now, if you have someone who actually speaks Arabic, who's an expert in Arabic, then they'll be like, come on, just because you know Arabic doesn't mean that you can comment on religious matters. these are, very deep discussions about theology and fiqh and ilm al-rijal. Okay, now you have someone who has actually studied theology, ilm al-rijal, ilm al-hadith. He has memorized the Quran. They're like, come on, just because you've memorized the Quran and studied all of these subjects on your own doesn't mean you can actually comment on these things. You need to study in the Hausa. Okay, then you have some people who have studied in the Hausa and they say these things. They're like, come on, this is just a low-level scholar. Our Maraji have studied all these things for years, and how can they be wrong? And then you actually have some Maraji and Mujtahideen who say these things. Then they run out of arguments and they're like, yeah, he's just a deviant. This was a fringe guy. He was a deviant. He has already been refuted. So, if they don't want to believe, they will never believe. They'll have all these arguments against you, but in the end, they'll be like, yeah, this guy's just a deviant.
Misam, I would love to hear that on a stand-up comedy skit. It's beautiful, but it's so true. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, those are the steps that we have gone through, and those are the steps that we are seeing. So, I mean, very well put. Thank you so much for that. Kamran, you have the floor.
Yeah, amazing points from Brother Misam. And I just wanted to add to your original point about the character assassination and why people do it. And I really feel like it's just because it's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest way to appeal to the masses by just, throwing insults and just a character assassinating someone. It doesn't take that much mental power or effort to, do that versus actually responding with proper evidences and refutations. It's a lot easier to just, call someone names and just, hope people will follow that. But it's also, in my opinion, it's like a disadvantage for them. And it's because anyone who's, slightly educated knows that when someone is responding to a refutation or in a debate or an argument with character assassinations, they're just using logical fallacies to, change the subject. Everyone understands that. So for me, these character assassinations towards, like Saeed Ali or Islaah as a platform, in the long term, these are things that are, like most people will realize that these are nothing but, weak arguments because they're not actually responding to the evidences. They're just, throwing red herrings or doing ad hominem attacks. They're not, most people understand this is not how, proper debate or refutation happens. So in my opinion, this is the easiest thing for them to do, but they're falling into the trap where it's easy to do, but it's going to, not benefit them in the long run.
Yes, indeed. That's very, very true. And yeah, I mean, this question that I'm asking is only because one of these prominent scholars, a very well-known leader, exactly, who took maybe about 10 minutes from beautiful preaching time to character assassinate, did not answer to any of the questions that were raised, but rather just pointed fingers. So yeah, I mean, it's a blame game. But anyway, we'll discuss this much further. Misam, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more point. What Brother Kamran said was absolutely true. They have these tags they throw around when they don't have answers. So this is, whoever watches Engineer Muhammad Ali Mirza knows this. He says that, when you talk about Ahlul Bayt, you get tagged as a Shia. Oh, this guy's a Shia, he's being paid by Iran. When you talk about Tawheed, they say, oh, this guy's a Wahhabi. When you talk about the love of the Prophet, they say, oh, this guy's a Barelvi. He's being paid by them. When you talk about the Sahaba, they say, this guy's a Deobandi. So how can one guy be Shia, Wahhabi, Deobandi, Barelvi at the same time? That's why he says, na main Wahhabi, na main Babi, main hu Muslim, ilmi kitabi. I'm either a Wahhabi, nor am I a Babi who blindly follows scholars. I'm an ilmi kitabi Muslim,
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and if you follow the book that the Prophet left, I think, there's key answers. And I'm going back to Khadija Zareen's answer, which was, go back to it. It's got everything in it. Sayyid Raza.
Yeah, so Misam is making me laugh today. Or just the original point about Sister Khadija, she mentioned the gold, the dhahab, right in the beginning of this show, when she mentioned that they've created a barrier between us and the Quran, where you feel like to understand the Quran, you need other scholars, or you need to be this PhD expert in Arabic, when the whole point of Allah's kalam in the Quran was nasiyah for everyone, for awam and nas. It wasn't for Allah's revealed the Quran for some PhD specialists, and because the majority of people are not PhD specialists. So Allah revealed the Quran only for them, but that's what they make you think. So then they cut your understanding of the Quran where you can't understand it. Therefore, even the clear ayat that mention stuff like only ask Allah for help, you think, yeah, but they've told me this, so it must mean that. So you start making clear verses and understanding them in a very twisted way because they force you to do that. And going back to another point that I wanted to talk about was that these tags that people are talking about, these tags that are given to Islaah, Al-Ustad Sayyid Kamanpuri, and our team and stuff, especially Sayyid Kamanpuri, these tags are not coming from the Awam and Nas. This is coming from the scholars, the so-called scholars of our sect. They're the people that are doing ad hominems, personal attacks, talking about he's gone to an Indian university. I don't know why India is relevant to the point, but regardless, they're mentioning all these weird kind of points. So if this is the state of the scholars when they respond with ad hominems and personal attacks, what do you reckon the state of the awam, the common person, when the scholars behave like this? Because the people are only on the religion of the scholars. So it shows you that the problem comes from the top down, not from the bottom up, because the top speak like this. Instead of speaking in an intellectual, respectful manner, they disrespect, ad hominems, and they're lucky it's someone like Sayyid Kamanpuri because he doesn't give them a chance because he's very respectful back. If it was me, I would have gone back to back. But you see, they can't even use that excuse because Sayyid Kamanpuri is respectful. So now they have nothing left, so they just continue with the same line of assault. So these tags from a younger age, oh, he's a Wahhabi, he's a this, he's a that. That's 15 years ago it worked. That time is finished now. Fulah's a Wahhabi, Fulah's this. That they had their time for that. That time is done now. The time now is of information, and information is readily available for everyone. So that time was fun, and we are very lucky to live in this time. And anyone now who falls into that same trap, I really do dua that Allah guides them and gets out of it, because this is not a time you can, if 50 years ago you could fool me because of a lack of information, today is not that time. So I do dua that Allah is able to get everyone out of that, and you should really consider and look at yourself if you're part of those smear campaigns by following those scholars blindly.
Yes, I was actually listening to somebody this week, and the ayah that was that was quoted, because it's quoted in a public place, and nobody probably has a Quran or nobody's taking any notes. Nobody goes back to go and research as to what was said and how it was said. But like what we are saying today is that we have the tools readily available to do a search very quickly and read the ayah and understand it, and you've got multiple translators on your phone. So it makes life much, much easier for us. And yes, we are lucky that we were born in this era. So, inshallah, this is something that's going to help us for our hereafter. I don't know, but that's what I'm hoping. Sayyid Hur, would you like the floor before I close?
Sure. Absolutely. We come back full circle to, before we close, to what was mentioned at the very start. Ultimately, going back to the Quran, and for our public, for our community members to feel safe and secure enough. I don't know why they have been terrified of the Quran, and they have been, fear has been instilled, and they've been told, as people in deviant sects are always told, don't read the Quran, you will get misguided. Like Allah is saying, Hudan linnas. I reveal this book to guide people. Non-Muslims are converting to Islam after reading this book. But you, the Muslim, oh, dare you read this book, you will be misguided, you will go out of Islam. Which logic is this? And the interesting thing is, usually, I will say, let's give them some credit, it's not usually so much the scholars, I think, here, although they might also be jumping on this bandwagon. Usually it's the less learned and ignorant sections of the public who speak like this. Otherwise, you can see, the interesting thing is it's the people who don't have expertise who say that lay people cannot understand the Quran, and that the Quran is not clear enough for them. Otherwise, Dr. Sayyidah Khadija Zareen is a PhD in Islamic studies. She's an expert. At Islaah, you have, for example, people like yours truly. I'm a PhD in Arabic. If anyone, I should be telling people, oh, this Quran, this Arabic Quran has got complexities and nuances and subtleties. You won't be able to. But the interesting thing is the experts are telling you this book is really simple. It is deliberately been made simple. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ. Allah has gone out of the way to make it simple and easy to understand so that you don't have any excuses against him on the day of judgment. وَقَدْ قَدَّمْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ بِالْوَعِيدِ. He shuts down arguments on the day of judgment saying, look, I was very clear with my warnings. I left no room for doubt. So if now you've gone astray, you are to blame for that. So you see, the experts are telling you the Quran is really simple and easy to understand if you are a sincere and serious person. Yes, if you're a fasiq, if you're someone with diseased mind and diseased heart and soul, and you want to prove all kinds of deviation from that, then yes, وَمَا يُضِلُّ بِهِ إِلَّا الْفَاسِقِينَ. But if you're a sincere person and you are serious, the Quran represents the biggest hope and the biggest opportunity, lifeline, rope, as the Prophet calls it. Hablum mamdudum min as-sama. It's like a lifeline in Hadithu Thaqalain, the original Hadithu Thaqalain. The Holy Prophet introduces us to the Quran as the lifeline of Allah, the rope that He has literally let down from the sky so that we may grasp onto it and come back to the straight path.
Before I close, I was told this story. I don't know how far true it is. These are those, I saw it in a dream sort of situation, maybe, I don't know. But this sounds very, very plausible. And it's about a young man who was traveling from one country to another and was flying Emirates. At that time, of course, you put your headphones on and you search through the channels. And he hit onto something and found it very, very nice and very soothing. The way I know, this person wasn't a Muslim, but he was listening to this thing that gave him so much sukoon. It was actually the verses of the Quran, because on Emirates you have that. The story is that this person ended up becoming a Muslim just by listening to the words, not knowing the meaning or the translation on that particular instance. But I think they went out and said, oh, I want to know more about what this thing was that touched my heart. They did the research. I think not only did he become a Muslim, but he went on to study Hausa. So, yeah, I mean, this is something that has happened. And what was said today, everything about, all the questions that have been raised, all the things that we are trying to, so it's reviving our hearts, bringing our hearts back to the original knowledge that was shared by the Prophet, by the progeny. And yes, he said clearly, hold on to the two things that I'm leaving with you. I think sometimes we are picking on one and leaving the other, or not being able to, But anyway, these are things that will, of course, ISNAD is going to continue. We're going to have more of these conversations. And Brother Misam, please, I would love to have you around, because you have this beautiful, you made me happy today. So thank you. That's all we have time for today. But please do subscribe to the Islaah channel, and all these ISNAD lectures and the lectures prior are all uploaded. So, and at any time you have any questions or whatever, please send us an email, and we will try and include your questions into these conversations. Thank you so much to all of you for your time, for your knowledge and experience. And karibuni sana again, please.
Asante sana. Asante sana for being such a gracious moderator and for basically conducting this wonderful conversation. I personally really enjoyed it and benefited from it. And I hope everyone else did too.
Asante. We'll try. We try hardest. All right. Thank you, everybody, and ma salam.